The wind scraped across the open plain like a dull blade over bone. By midday, the sky above Haynes Ranch hung white-hot, bleaching the world to nothing but shimmer and dust. Jeremy Haynes adjusted his hat brim against the glare and scanned the fence line, his daily ritual since the rustlers hit his northern pasture. Then he saw movement where there shouldn't be any. A woman stood bound to his fence post, rope cinched tight around her waist, a brown leather satchel still hanging defiantly from her shoulder. Her hair hung loose and wild, dark strands plastered to her sun-reddened face. Dust streaked her cheeks like war paint. Her lips were cracked from thirst, but her eyes, those eyes held something that stopped him cold. Not fear, not pleading. Defiance worn down to its last thread. Jeremy's boots crunched through dry grass as he approached, hand instinctively near his holster. He'd been burned before. Trusting strangers in Wyoming territory was how you lost cattle, horses, or your life. She watched him circle her like a wary animal, her chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. "Who sent you?" His voice came out harder than he intended. She lifted her chin barely, the effort costing her, and her voice emerged hoarse, brittle, resigned. "Do whatever you want, cowboy." The words hit him like a fist to the chest. That wasn't rebellion. That was someone who'd stopped expecting mercy from men like him. From any man. Jeremy's hand fell away from his gun. For a moment, he saw something else. Rope burns on her wrists, older than this binding. The slump of someone who'd been left before, hurt before, dismissed before. His jaw tightened as unwanted memories flickered the feel of rope against his own skin. The humiliation of being tied and whipped for doing the right thing. He turned away sharply, boots kicking up dust. "I'll be back." He mounted his horse and rode hard toward Copper Bend, guilt already gnawing at him. He needed to verify her story, check if she was registered with the territorial merchants, but the image stayed burned in his mind. Her defiant eyes, her exhausted surrender. That devastating line. Behind him, Gabriella Roberts sagged against the fence post, the rope cutting deeper with each breath. The sun climbed higher, and she whispered to the endless Wyoming sky, "Just another man, thinking the worst of me." Before we ride further into this tale of dust, danger, and thrilling redemption, take a moment to support us. A simple like, a quick comment, or hitting that subscribe button helps these Wild West Tales stories reach the people who crave them. Let me know where you're listening from, and thank you for saddling up with us. The rope cut deeper with each shallow breath. Gabriella's fingers fumbled weakly at the knot, but her hands had stopped obeying hours ago. The sun pressed down like an iron brand, and her mind drifted between now and yesterday, between this fence and the moment 3 men had circled her wagon. "Pretty thing like you shouldn't be traveling alone," Vern Kellick had said, tobacco-stained grin splitting his face. Then came the laughter, the grabbing, her mule's panicked bray as they cut it loose and scattered her carefully organized inventory across the trail. Tinctures shattering, soap cakes trampled, remedies she'd spent months preparing destroyed in minutes. She'd fought. God, she'd fought. But 3 against 1 ended the same way it always did. They'd left her in the dust with nothing but her satchel and a choice, die there or walk. So she walked. 20 miles through heat that shimmered like water that would never come. Past empty prairie and wind-carved stone until she'd stumbled onto Haynes land, half dead and desperate for water, and found another man who assumed the worst. In Copper Bend, Jeremy's hands shook as he studied Gabriella's merchant papers. The clerk's words echoed. No warrants, no complaints. Just a woman trying to make an honest living. His stomach turned. The scar on his wrist began to ache phantom pain from when he'd been tied and whipped for refusing Lieutenant Crane's order to burn a civilian homestead. He'd sworn then he'd never become the man holding the rope. Yet here he was. Jeremy bolted from the office, mounted his horse, and rode hard. Guilt drove the spurs deeper than he'd ever pushed before. When he crested the final hill, his heart stopped. Gabriella hung limp against the post, head lolled forward, body motionless under the merciless sun. He might already be too late. Jeremy's knife sliced through the rope in one desperate stroke. Gabriella collapsed forward, and he caught her before she hit the ground, her body light as kindling, burning with fever. Her eyes fluttered open, focusing on him with effort. When she spoke, her voice came raw and bitter. "Changed your mind? Or just changed your fear?" The words cut deeper than any blade. Jeremy's jaw tightened, but he didn't answer. Didn't trust himself to. Instead, he lifted her carefully and carried her toward the house, her head lolling against his shoulder. Inside, he laid her on his bed near the window where cooler air drifted through. He worked quickly, wringing out cloths and basin water, pressing them to her forehead and neck. When he brought the tin cup to her cracked lips, she drank greedily, water spilling down her chin. "I was wrong," he said finally, the words feeling clumsy and insufficient. "I thought you were with them. The rustlers." Gabriella's laugh came harsh and humorless. "So you tied me up like they did?" Jeremy's hands stilled over the rope, burns on her wrists. Red welts, some still bleeding, older scars beneath. He said nothing, because what could he say? "I'm not forgiving you," she whispered, turning her face to the wall. "I'm just too tired to leave." "I know." Night settled thick and black over the ranch. Gabriella's breathing finally steadied into fitful sleep. Jeremy positioned himself in the doorway, rifle across his knees, watching both her and the darkness beyond. Then he heard it, the soft crunch of boots on hard earth. A horse's quiet snort, a whisper carrying on the wind. "You sure she came here?" Jeremy's fingers tightened on the rifle. The rustlers had found her. Gabriella woke to pressure a calloused hand firm over her mouth. Jeremy's face hovered inches above hers, his eyes urgent in the darkness. He pressed a finger to his lips. Outside, gravel crunched under heavy boots. 3 shadows moved near the barn, backlit by moonlight. "Haynes." A voice rang out rough, familiar. Gabriella's chest tightened. "Vern Kellick. We know you got the saleswoman. Send her out, and we'll leave peaceful." Jeremy's jaw set like stone. He finally understood she'd been telling the truth all along. "She's not here," Jeremy called back, stepping onto the porch with his rifle raised. A gunshot cracked the air, warning fire, high and sharp. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." Gabriella's hands trembled, but something burned through her fear. She rose on unsteady legs and moved to the doorway. Jeremy tried to block her, but she slipped past him. "I'm here," she called out, voice carrying across the yard. "You want me? Come get me." The rustlers advanced. Vern's grin gleamed in the dark. "Smart girl." Gabriella grabbed the lantern from the porch post and hurled it with everything she had left. Glass shattered against the barn wall. Flame erupted, racing up dry wood and catching the hay stored inside. Orange light exploded across the night. The rustlers scattered, shouting, horses rearing in panic. Within seconds, they'd vanished into the darkness beyond the firelight. Jeremy stood frozen, staring at her, this half-dead woman who'd just saved his property and possibly his life. He gripped her shoulders, steadying her as she swayed. "Why'd you put yourself in danger?" Gabriella met his eyes, firelight dancing across her exhausted face. "Because running only works when you've got somewhere to run." Dawn broke gray and smoky over Haynes Ranch. Jeremy and Gabriella worked side by side in exhausted silence, dousing embers, salvaging tools, calming the frightened horses. Ash streaked their faces and clothes, but the barn still stood, barely. When Jeremy reached overhead to secure a loose beam, his shirt pulled tight across his back. Gabriella saw it, then the scar curving over his left shoulder, disappearing beneath the fabric. Not a clean line, something deliberate, something cruel. "That's not from ranch work," she said quietly. Jeremy's hand dropped. He turned away. "It's nothing. It's not nothing." The silence stretched long enough that she thought he wouldn't answer. Then his voice came low, almost hollow. "I was a soldier. My commanding officer, Lieutenant Crane, ordered our unit to burn a homestead. Civilians inside. Women, children." His jaw worked. "I refused." Gabriella's breath caught. "They tied me to a post in front of the entire camp, whipped me, made an example." His hand unconsciously moved to his shoulder. "Told me obedience mattered more than mercy." Gabriella stepped closer, her eyes softening with recognition, not pity, but understanding. She'd seen that same haunted look in her own reflection after the rustlers left her for dead. "So you know what a rope feels like," she whispered. Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. Two people who'd been bound, broken, abandoned, and somehow still standing. Jeremy nodded slowly. "I'll fix your wagon, get you back on the road proper. Thank you." Later, as evening light painted the plains gold, Gabriella walked to the fence line. Her fingers traced the splintered post where she'd been tied rough wood, frayed rope still dangling. Some marks, she thought, never fully disappeared. But maybe they didn't have to. The hammer's rhythm echoed across the empty plains, steady, purposeful, almost meditative. Jeremy drove the new post deep into the Wyoming earth, while Gabriella held the level steady, squinting against the morning sun. "Little to the left," she said. "It's straight. It's leaning." Jeremy paused, checked, adjusted. "You're right." She smiled, small, but genuine. "Don't sound so surprised, Cowboy." The tension between them had shifted overnight, settling into something easier, almost comfortable. When Gabriella reached to brush dust from his sleeve, the gesture felt natural. When Jeremy noticed her bandage slipping and carefully rewrapped it, neither acknowledged how long his fingers lingered. "I trusted someone once," Gabriella said quietly, watching him work. "A trader from Santa Fe. Said he'd help expand my routes, introduce me to suppliers." Her voice hardened. "What he wanted was to control where I went, who I sold to. Thought buying my supplies meant owning me." Jeremy's hammer paused mid-swing. "What happened?" "I left. Middle of the night. Lost half my inventory, but kept myself." She met his eyes. "That's why I travel alone. Why I don't ask for help. It's not pride, Jeremy. It's survival." He nodded slowly, understanding settling between them, like the fence post finding solid ground. "I get that." They worked in companionable silence, the rebuilt post standing clean and strong where the broken one had been. A small repair, a quiet symbol. Then Jeremy's eyes caught something in the dirt beyond the fence line. Fresh hoof prints, multiple horses, circling the property. His hand stilled on the hammer. "They're coming back," Gabriella whispered, following his gaze. Jeremy's jaw set. "Yeah, but this time we'll be ready." They came in the purple hour before sunrise, three riders materializing from the darkness like ghosts made flesh. Vern Kellick led them, rifle gleaming in pre-dawn light. "Get in the barn," Jeremy hissed, positioning himself between Gabriella and the approaching threat. "Now." "No, Gabriella. I'm done hiding." The rustlers dismounted 50 yards out. Vern's voice carried across the still air. "The girl's seen our faces, Haynes. Can't let her talk to the law." "She stays," Jeremy called back, rifle raised. "Then you both got a problem." They rushed forward in a blur of motion and dust. Jeremy fired, once missed. Then Vern's brother Cole slammed into him, driving him to the ground. The rifle skittered away. Fists flew, brutal and desperate. The third rustler, Harlan, lunged for Gabriella. She stumbled backward, her hand finding Jeremy's revolver on the porch railing. The weight felt wrong, heavy with consequence. Harlan's fingers closed around her wrist. "Shoulda stayed quiet, girl." The gunshot cracked like thunder. Harlan screamed, clutching his shoulder as he fell. The sound echoed across the valley, impossibly loud in the morning stillness. Vern and Cole froze, then scrambled for their horses, dragging Harlan between them. Within seconds, hoofbeats faded into the distance. Gabriella stood trembling, smoke curling from the revolver's barrel. Jeremy pushed himself upright, staring at her. This woman he'd once tied to his fence, now standing with a smoking gun and fierce determination burning in her eyes. "You ain't helpless," he said quietly, something like awe in his voice. Gabriella lowered the revolver, breath coming hard and fast. "Told you that late, Cowboy." Night settled soft over the ranch, stars emerging like scattered diamonds across endless black. Gabriella and Jeremy sat near the rebuilt fence post, backs against the wood, nursing bruises that would purple by morning. The violence felt distant now, replaced by the gentle sounds of crickets and wind through dry grass. Gabriella broke the silence first, her voice barely above a whisper. When I said, "Do whatever you want, Cowboy," when you had me tied to this post, I'd already given up. She stared at the horizon. I didn't think there was anyone left worth trusting. Figured you'd be like all the rest. Jeremy turned toward her, moonlight catching the scar on his shoulder, visible through his torn shirt. I know that feeling, he said quietly. Been carrying it since the war. Making strangers pay for what my commanding officer did to me. What those rustlers did to my cattle. He paused. I'm done with that. Done making the wrong folks answer for someone else's sins. The silence that followed felt different, not empty, but full. Full of understanding, of shared wounds beginning to heal, of two people recognizing themselves in each other's scars. Jeremy's hand moved slowly across the dirt between them, hesitating near hers. A question without words. Gabriella looked down at his calloused fingers, the same hands that had tied her, then freed her, then fought for her. She didn't pull away. Instead, she turned her palm upward, letting his fingers intertwine with hers. No words needed. Just two people, bound by something new, not rope this time, but choice. Above them, the stars wheeled silent and infinite, bearing witness to something small and fragile, taking root in hard Wyoming soil. Something that might, with time, grow into trust. 3 days later, Gabriella's wagon stood ready, wheel repaired, supplies restocked, her satchel packed with new tinctures Jeremy had helped her prepare. The morning sun painted everything gold, beautiful and bittersweet. Jeremy watched from the porch, memorizing the way she moved, efficient, independent, free. Trying to ignore the hollow ache spreading through his chest. She walked to the rebuilt fence post one last time, running her fingers over the smooth wood. Jeremy joined her there, hands shoved deep in his pockets. I fixed it right this time, he said quietly. Gabriella's fingers traced the grain, lingering where rope had once cut into her skin. Guess some things can be fixed. She turned toward her wagon, and Jeremy felt the moment slipping away. She climbed onto the driver's seat, gathered the reins, then paused. Their eyes met across the dusty yard. You keep fixing fences, Cowboy. Her voice carried soft but clear. You might just fix yourself too. Jeremy took a step forward. Maybe I'll need help with that. The words hung between them, not a demand, not even quite a question, just an offering. A door left open. Gabriella's smile came slow, warming her entire face. She didn't answer with words, but the look she gave him held promise of return, of possibility, of a future neither had dared imagine days before. She clicked her tongue, and the wagon rolled forward. Jeremy stood beside the fence as she disappeared